Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a very good evening. Welcome to Primetime Asia. Tonight, we'll provide you with some of the Asia-Pacific's latest scenes in the areas of political response to socio-economic development and cultural issues around the Asia-Pacific nations. These include the United States and India voicing their concern over the fate of the former Maldivian president, and the Australian Prime Minister has announced that his country will strengthen immigration laws and crack down on groups that incite hatred under a new counter-terrorism law. A wave of bomb attacks around Baghdad killed nearly 40 people and wounded dozens more, and avalanches caused by a heavy winter snow killed more than 100 people in northeastern Afghanistan. We also bring in news from Iran, South Korea. Here's Dayanku Susilawati Pingiran Haji Muhammad Sabri with the reports.
The United States and regional power India have voiced their concern over the fate of the former Maldives president Mohammad Nasheed, who was forcibly dragged into court to face terrorism charges and denied legal access and medical treatment. Nasheed was arrested last Sunday after a court said he might flee the country to avoid hearings on terrorism charges. The arrest led to clashes between his supporters and authorities. Nasheed, who was arrested 3 years ago, was also denied bail at a brief hearing after being arrested on what critics have labelled trump-up charges. An eyewitness who filmed the incident on his mobile phone said Nasheed went to the Justice Building, and when he was preparing to talk to the media outside, he was dragged by police. Nasheed, Maldives' first democratically elected president, had been facing criminal charges over his order to arrest a top judge in January 2012. Nasheed stepped down in early 2012, saying he had been overthrown in a coup. The charges carry a penalty of more than 10 years in prison. Nasheed's Maldivian Democratic Party MDP said in a statement it now feared the actions by the Maldives government may lead to uncontrollable scenes of unrest and confrontations on the streets.
Police and other law enforcement.
The Australian Prime Minister Mr Tony Abbott has announced that Australia will strengthen immigration laws and crack down on groups that incite hatred under a new counter-terrorism law intended to combat the threat of homegrown extremists. Mr Abbott presented the nation's new anti-extremism strategy following the release of a government review into last December's deadly siege at a Sydney cafe. Mr Abbott said that among the measures are revoking or suspending Australian citizenship to dual nationals who preach hate and stronger prohibitions on vilifying, intimidating or inciting hatred. However, the Australian leader cannot promise that terrorist atrocities won't ever again take place on Australian soil. His government will never underestimate the terror threat. A wave of bomb attacks around Baghdad killed nearly 40 people and wounded dozens more, as at least 7 explosions struck in or near the Iraqi capital. No group immediately claimed responsibility for the bombings, but Iraq sees near-daily attacks, mostly by Sunni insurgents, targeting the country's Shiite majority and security forces. The deadliest incident on Tuesday killed 24 people in 2 blasts in Jisr Diyala district, southeast of the city. 50 others were wounded, including several students who had just come out of a nearby school after class. The first bomb went off in a commercial area near restaurants, shops and street stall. Police tried to prevent people gathering at the scene, but shortly afterwards, a car bomb was detonated in the same area. 3 of the people killed in the second blast were police. Earlier, 5 other explosions hit northern and southern neighborhoods. The attacks come as Iraqi security forces battle IS militants who control large areas of north and west Iraq, who have claimed many recent bombings in Baghdad. An official said on Wednesday avalanches caused by a heavy winter snow killed at least 124 people in northeastern of Afghanistan as rescuers searched through the debris. According to Muhammad Aslam Sears, the Deputy Director of the Afghanistan Natural Disaster Management Authority, homes were buried across 4 northeast provinces. He added the province worst hit appeared to be Panjshir province, about 100 kilometers northeast of the capital Kabul, where the avalanches destroyed or damaged around 100 homes. Large parts of Afghanistan have been covered in snow as a major storm interrupted an otherwise mild and dry winter. Afghanistan has suffered through some 3 decades of war since the Soviet invasion in 1979. But natural disasters such as landslide, floods and avalanches have taken a toll on the country with little infrastructure or development outside of its major cities. In May, a massive landslide killed anywhere from 250 to 2,700 people. Another landslide in 2012 killed 71 people. Authorities were not able to recover the vast majority of bodies and ended up declaring the site of a massive grave. Iran's Revolutionary Guard launched large-scale naval and air defense drills near strategic Gulf waterway, in which dozens of speedboats swarm a replica of a U.S. aircraft carrier. The drill, named Great Prophet 9, was held near the Strait of Hormuz, through which 1/5 of the world's oil passes. Iran's regular army carried out naval drills near the strait in December. State TV showed footage of missiles fired from the coast and the fast boat striking the mock U.S. aircraft carrier. The drills, which also included shooting down a drone and planting undersea mines, were the first to involve a replica of a U.S. carrier. The Guard's Chief Commander General Muhammad Ali Jafari said the drill sent a message of Iran's might to extraterritorial powers, a reference to the United States. The Americans were monitoring the drills but downplayed the simulated attack on the carrier, saying the U.S. military was not concerned about this exercise. Meanwhile, the Iranian president has called on world powers to lift all the oppressive and illegal sanctions against his country in order to reach a nuclear deal with them. Addressing a crowd of people in the city of Qom, Hassan Rouhani reiterated that Iranian nuclear negotiators would not accept any imposition, humiliation or continuation of sanctions. Iran is currently negotiating an agreement over its disputed nuclear program with the United States, Britain, France, Russia, China and Germany. Western nations have long suspected Iran is covertly seeking a nuclear weapons capability, charges denied by Tehran. Nuclear talks are set to resume on Monday in Geneva, according to the Iranian foreign minister. The South Korean Defense Ministry has vowed to take strong countermeasures against North Korea if there is an adverse reaction to the South Korea-United States joint military drill expected to start early next month. The Key Resolve and Fall Eagle exercises are an unusual operations designed to prevent invasion of South Korea by the North. The U.S. and South Korea have repeatedly claimed that their war games are defensive in nature and they have no intentions of attacking the North. North Korea told the U.S. last month that it was willing to impose a temporary moratorium on its nuclear tests if Washington scraps the military drills with South Korea this year, but the allies have refused to cancel the exercises. The South Korean Defense Ministry said last week that the U.S. was planning to send a larger number of soldiers than it did last year, but did not provide a specific number. About 12,700 American troops participated in similar drill last year. Also in Seoul, a Japanese embassy official has been summoned by the South Korean Foreign Ministry to hear South Korean displeasure over Japan's recent celebration of Takashima Day. The two countries have been in long dispute over the sovereignty of a set of islets in the waters between South Korea and Japan. A minister at the Japanese embassy in Seoul, Kanasugi Kenji, was called in by the South Korean Foreign Ministry's Northeast Asian Affairs Director General Lee Sang-dyo and received diplomatic documents which included the South Korean government's stern stance over the celebration. The Japanese government sent a Cabinet Office Parliamentary Secretary Yohei Matsumoto to the 10th Takashima Day event held in Shimane Prefecture. During the ceremony, it is reported that Matsumoto said the islets are an inherent part of Japan's territory under international law.
Welcome back. A swine flu outbreak in India has killed more than 700 people since mid-December, and demonstrators have protested outside the Australian embassy in Jakarta against comments made by the Australian Prime Minister. In other developments, 2 pedestrians fell into a sinkhole in the South Korean capital Seoul, and a Dutch tourist was rescued after falling off a cliff of a famous tourist spot in Sri Lanka, as well as more visitors continue crowding Macau. Stay on for the full reports.
A swine flu outbreak in India has killed more than 700 people, and the government is having a tough time controlling the epidemic. And in Indian capital, New Delhi alone, there were 9 reported deaths. According to the Indian health authorities, the number of the cases has increased to nearly 13,000 since the flu broke out in December. The outbreak of the H1N1 virus has been the worst in 5 years, with the states of Gujarat and Rajasthan being the worst affected. Following the criticism the government received for its failure in the distribution of medicine, health authorities have made efforts to ensure public hospitals across the country had adequate medical supplies and could provide free medical service for all patients. Health authorities have also launched a campaign to tell people about precautions they should take to avoid the deadly flu. In the flu outbreak in 2009 and 2010, nearly 550,000 people were infected and more than 2,700 people died in India. Demonstrators have protested outside the Australian embassy in Jakarta this week against comments made by the Australian Prime Minister, Mr. Tony Abbott, linking his country's aid to Indonesia during the 2004 tsunami to the looming execution of 2 Australians for drug violations. Some of the demonstrators are carrying banners criticizing the Australian leader for interfering in Indonesian laws. Andrew Chan and Muran Sukumaran were the ringleaders of a group of 9 Australians arrested in 2005 for attempting to smuggle heroin to Australia from the Indonesian resort island of Bali. They are now among 8 convicts who are to be executed by firing squad. Last week, Abbott made his strongest indication yet that Indonesia would face diplomatic consequences if it rejected Australia's appeals for clemency. Jakarta's administrative court last week dismissed an attempt by the 2 men to avoid execution by challenging Indonesian President Joko Widodo's rejection of the appeal for clemency. Widodo said he will not accept any attempts by other countries to halt the execution of foreign drug traffickers. But the Foreign Minister Julie Bishop appealed to Widodo and to the Indonesian people to show mercy towards the pair. In South Korea, 2 people suffered minor injuries after they fell into a sinkhole that opened up in the pavement in the capital, Seoul. A video shot by local bus CCTV showed a male and a female getting off a bus in the Yongsan area and then suddenly disappearing into a sinkhole in the pavement. They were eventually rescued by firemen and taken to a nearby hospital. The sinkhole was found just next to a construction site where Daewoo Engineering and Construction is building 2 39-story apartments. Seoul Metropolitan City officials and the Korean Geotechnical Society members were investigating how the sinkhole was created.
When you can see him, start to talk to him.
Sri Lanka's army have rescued a Dutch tourist who fell off the cliff of a famous tourist spot while taking photographs. Mamito Lendas, 35, fell after taking a few steps back to take pictures of his new wife. Local media reported that the couple were visiting World's End, a popular tourist attraction in the Houghton Plains National Park of Nuwara Eliya, when the incident happened. Sri Lankan military said Lendas landed on top of a tree about 130 feet from the top, and he hung on to branches until troops from nearby army camp arrived at the scene to help. There were about 780,000 visitor arrivals in the first 5 days of the Lunar New Year. The official figures point to a 3% increase over last year. Many choose to go to downtown, where crowd control measures have been in place. Some tourists say the streets are too packed, while others believe that despite the heavily congested environment, it is still a pleasant experience. Tourists from different cities still keep coming to Macau as they try to make the most of the holiday experience in the city. Some of them do not mind the busy crowd in major tourist areas and still consider their experience pleasant. While some people enjoy the convenience of getting around the city, some tourists have had some difficulty finding their way to places and getting by with the crowd. According to data from the Macau Government Tourist Office, the number of tourist arrivals reached 780,000 from the 19th to 24th of February alone. Nearly 75% are of tourist arrival from mainland China, accounting for a 5.7% year-on-year increase.
And that concludes this week's edition of Primetime Asia. Till we meet again with more interesting news next week. To watch more on our Primetime Asia portal video, you can visit our website at www.rtbnews.rtb.gov.bn. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Wishing you all a pleasant week ahead and good night.